Everybody sing that shit.
So, it's episode 3 of The Breakdown. We've got Anthony Hallshaw with us, who is a... Tell me.
Who is a
CBT practitioner.
CBT, Cognitive Behavioural Therapist,
Mm-hmm.
based in Blackpool, in sunny Blackpool in the north
Sunny
of
Blackpool.
England. And I thought I'd put a baseball cap on today to be in line
Beautiful.
with you, because I noticed your last guest, Drew, had a baseball cap on, and you always do. So yeah, so I thought
You got to be vaping as well if you want to be in the real crew, you know.
I'm not up to that yet. Yeah, so I work as a CBT therapist in Blackpool, and used to be at a famous hospital that I can't name.
Okay.
So I've got quite a lot of history in CBT and counselling,
Mm-hmm.
particularly to do with anxiety and addiction.
How long have you been in that field? A long time?
Yeah, it's been. It came out of a result of my own anxiety experiences when I was a lot younger, and then I sort of had anxiety from like late teens to early 30s, and then I started to train in it and find out about it, which took some of the sting out of it. I think the more you know about it, you know a lot about it, don't you? Sometimes it doesn't always work. I know a lot about it, I hope, but sometimes you can still suffer. You can know everything about something and still suffer. I always think of it like athlete's foot. You could be a podiatrist and know everything about feet,
but still
you still have it, couldn't you?
Yeah. Well, me and you have spoke before in the past about our old friend Dizziness. Like whenever I've posted a video about Dizziness, you always comment and say, we should talk about it. It seems that like when I post a video about Dizziness, it gets more views than anything else. It gets more comments. It gets more people saying I can relate to those sensations of dizziness. So I don't know. Maybe we should go down the old dizziness route. Because you were telling me, you've told me some interesting stuff. Like not all dizziness, anxiety-related dizziness, is just down to anxiety. Like there are some underlying conditions. I don't know whether we should go down that path. Because I don't want people to start, we don't want people to start thinking, oh God, I might have this, that, and the other. But it is interesting. Like there are conditions.
Absolutely, and I think there are three main ones. On my initial consultations, if you like, when I'm seeing new clients, I always, when they say that one of the main symptoms that they present him with is anxiety and dizziness, I always try to find out on session 1 whether whether it's anxiety causing the dizziness or it's something else. And the something else usually revolve around 2 main things. The first thing is hyperglycemia, which is obviously low blood sugar levels. So that can cause dizziness. If you put in the symptoms into Wikipedia of hyperglycemia and you put in the symptoms of anxiety, they're more or less the same symptoms, really. So the low blood sugar level can cause, as you know, shakiness, sweaty palms, dizziness, disequilibrium, jelly legs, and so that's hyperglycemia. So I always ask clients if they're eating right, if they're eating in the morning, so if they're getting enough protein, if they're stabilizing the blood sugars. It doesn't have to be anxiety, it can be hyperglycemia. And then, of course, the other thing is vestibular problems. So that's obviously the vestibular apparatus inside the inner ear. If that's slightly out of kilter, that can cause dizziness. And there are a host of things that spring from that, from vestibular problems, such as there's one called BPPV, which is benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, which is an inner ear problem. And there are so many other things, Meniere's disease, vestibular migraine. Vestibular migraines are quite a common one as well, that people very often don't think they've got because they haven't got the headache. So they think, well, I can't have a migraine. But quite a few of your videos that have come up sound a bit like vestibular migraine to me, and I've posted it sometimes as well.
Yeah, because I talk about it as well, not being a constant. Like, it's not a constant dizziness. It's not when I've got heightened anxiety. It can just be anytime. No rhyme or reason.
Yeah. And that's what vestibular migraine's like. So basically, vestibular migraine is a sort of mini migraine inside the ears. So the vestibular apparatus and the cerebellum at the back of the brain, which is involved in balance, that becomes sensitized, and then you feel like the slight dizziness, or it can be triggered by things, as you know, like going in malls and shops, and the Americans call it big box stores, like B&Q. I noticed in my 20s, which is a couple of years ago.
Just a few.
Just a few, yeah. I noticed in my 20s that every time I went into B&Q or Boots or WH Smith, I'd go a bit funny. So this is where it initially came from, all this. And I just feel like a bit off balance and just feeling a bit weird. And eventually I got some treatment for it with a CBT therapist, and he diagnosed it to be anxiety. Because, okay, you go out, you feel a bit funny in WH Smith. What are the symptoms? Dizziness, sweaty palms, jelly legs. But what it really was, for me anyway, is vestibular migraine. It was the lights that were triggering this imbalance. And so the vestibular migraines were there. I didn't know about that. I'd never heard of it.
Yeah.
But I got diagnosed with anxiety. But anxiety itself was a secondary thing. In other words, it was the vestibular migraines that were making me anxious. And then I became anxious generally, so that every time you want to go out then, because of conditioning, every time I wanted to go out, I'm starting to feel nervous, anxious, on edge, stomach churning, sweaty palms, everything else, because I'd become sensitized to going out. So it set up a vicious circle,
I was thinking of a question. Oh no, I was thinking, like, is the treatment the same though? Like, for them, because you can't cure migraines, can you? You can't stop them. I guess there's stuff that you can do that makes them less frequent. But is it kind of just to accept those sensations anyway? Like, is that the good news?
I don't know. I don't know if there is any good news. I guess the good news is that none of it will kill you. But underlying all anxiety is a sort of death fear, isn't it, or thanatos? And I think with vestibular migraines, there's so-called prophylaxis medication which can inhibit the start of them and slow it down a bit, or people can take amitriptyline, nortriptyline. Propranolol is a crossover one that some people find useful with vestibular migraine. Propranolol, which is obviously a beta blocker.
That's what I take.
Right, okay, yeah. So exactly, so also used for anxiety. And I tell you what it is with vestibular migraine, and it's a bit the same with anxiety. It's a bit of a trial and error drug.
Yeah.
And I always think, like if you or I broke our arm or something, you'd have the same treatment wherever you went in the world, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Remedy. Whereas with anxiety and migraines and things like that, it's not. It's a bit like which antidepressant works, fluoxetine, citalopram,
it's weird, isn't it? When you think of it like that, it's weird. Like, do the certain medications work for certain people, or is it like a bit of a placebo thing where some like maybe you heard that this is a good one, so when you get put on that, you have better results? I mean, there's a chance that is happening.
I think there's a lot of placebo involved with it. I think that's a massive thing, and the part of it is psychoeducational. I think if you know what's happening. Like I say, even though it was vestibular migraines that set me off, it still became anxiety. So
Yeah.
I know it well. So then avoidance sets up and everything. And I mean, the thing is whether you can go there despite the symptoms, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, like you went to, was it Scarborough or Skegness?
Skegness.
Skegness. You go to Skegness, so you went in spite of the symptoms, didn't you?
Yeah, regardless.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think if it's changing your life and sort of ruining your life, then you can become agoraphobic, can't you? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was in my late 20s. You know, I'd get my wife to go out and get soup for me from Next or
Mm.
something like that, or sort of
Yeah, yeah.
shirt, something like that. And it's a nightmare, really. I mean, I was antidepressants,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't want to go down that route. So, and I'd never tried them, to be honest, in my life. But I know a lot of people get great benefit from them, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't think anyone quite knows why.
Mm.
Um, but but you know, my view is do what works. You know, unless it's a crack pipe, do do what makes you better. You know, and do whatever helps. If it's celery soup, have celery soup. You know.
Mm. Mm. So obviously you recommend CBT. That's your
Yeah, I
thing.
do. Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you looked at all the research really in the world, if you looked at PubMed, which I suppose is the biggest research bank,
Mm.
and you said, what can I do about anxiety? Or what can I do about vestibular problems? The big answer would be CBT plus antidepressants. That's not necessarily my answer, but that would be the research answer.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so obviously CBT, I don't think it's the silver bullet. I don't think it's the cure all, the panacea, the elixir of life that people think. I think what's happened with CBT is that the waiting lists are so high
Mm-hmm.
that people have great expectations for it, and then they come in expecting this, and they've got this huge hope that it's
Mm.
going to cure everything, and quite often it doesn't. I mean, CBT is obviously, there's a famous book called Mind Over Mood, which
Mm.
basically says if you change the way you think, then you change the way you feel. But we are emotional animals, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
So that's all very well. You know, like if we were Data or Spock from Star Trek, we say, "Oh yeah, I just change the way I think, then
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
be all right." I
I've
mean,
had 3 lots of CBT on the NHS and
right,
never had a great response. I think it was the very first time I had it. Like after about 4 or 5 sessions, this woman came in and she took me out. We went for a walk, and that was the only
right,
time that I really benefited from it. But like just sitting in the office and talking, like it, I think like you just said, I had this expectation of like he's gonna cure me. I'm gonna go
mm,
here. He's gonna fix me. After like 8 sessions, I'm gonna be out of here and jobs are good. But it didn't work like that. And then even though I knew the second time that I went for it, I knew not to expect that, but still, I just didn't get enough from it. I didn't seem to, I don't know, like changing the way that I think.
yeah.
I can't.
Quite a lot of people say what you've just said
Mm,
actually,
mm,
and they also say about more generic counselling as well that it didn't quite hit the mark.
mm,
Um, I was also taken out by a CBT therapist I had about, well, it must be 20 something years ago now,
yeah,
and he took me out, so-called in vivo exposure
yeah,
or graded exposure. Um, and that is to decatastrophize the situation,
mm-hmm,
to make you realize, I've taken clients out myself on people who are reluctant to drive, who've been in car crashes. I've driven with them. I've taken them out into fearful environments, because
mm-hmm,
the idea, of course, is that if you face your fear, then the fear diminishes with
yeah, yeah.
graded exposure. But I know you've tried that ad infinitum. You've probably
I
done
mean,
more than me with it.
I have, but I don't do it often enough, perhaps. And maybe the way that I'm approaching it, I don't know, man. Like, I love doing these podcasts now because I'm learning so much off different people. So it's like I'm thinking back to what I've heard here, there, and everywhere. So it's mad, like the different theories and the different, like I have done so much to try and overcome, but I don't think I haven't done enough. I don't do it often enough. And like that's
Yeah.
the thing for me. Like I'll do exposure maybe for a week, and then I'll start feeling lousy. I'll feel exhausted because I've been putting myself in that position, and then it just fizzles out. Slowly start to drop again. My mood, my
Yeah.
motivation. You know.
Well, they say that action is the key to all this. So that's why, when you were
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the office just talking about it, you probably did thought records where
Mhm.
you do the situation, then the thoughts that arise, the feelings that arise, and then you dispute the thoughts, and then
Mhm.
you go through things like what would someone else say in that situation? Are you globalizing the problem? Are you decatastrophizing? You rate your feelings and do all that. But the
Mhm.
thing is, that's a very cerebral thing, and obviously that's the cognitive
Yeah,
part of
yeah. I'm bright enough to
it.
be able. I'm bright enough to be able to write that stuff down.
You do all that, yeah.
Yeah, but in the
But
heat of
then
the moment,
yeah, it goes out, does it?
yeah, yeah. I just don't. It's the last thing I think about.
Mm. And that's because the cortex, the grey matter in the brain, the
I've got a
outer
lot of
part of the
that.
brain, it's that gets cut off. you
Right.
know,
Mm.
it's that when we're in a stressful position, if you and I were in the middle of the Trafford Centre now and we felt a bit funny, the last thing you want to do is start thinking about thought records and globalizing and
Yeah, yeah.
catastrophizing and
Exactly.
dichotomous thinking.
Mhm.
What happens is the subconscious mind sees a threatening situation and it says, Billy, get out of there. You're under
Quick.
threat.
Mhm.
It says, leave. Do what you did last time to make you feel better. And so you leave. And so you're in your car, and then 20 minutes later, you feel all right. And the adrenaline's burned itself out.
Mhm.
Um, and quite a lot of times, CBT therapists could talk about this bell curve thing, where the anxiety arises, and as it rises, and as it's rising, people escape there before it's got to the top of the curve.
Yeah.
So they escape, and then they go home.
Mhm.
So and then they feel better anyway. But the idea is that you're in the Trafford Centre, it goes really bad, and then if you stay long enough, it'll go down anyway.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no one ever stays long enough, because when you feel like shit and you feel you're going to faint or you're going to die or you're going to scream out or go mad, you just want to get back to your car, so that you think like, well, if I'm safe, I can go mad in my car and no one, I can
Yeah,
go
yeah.
quietly mad and no one will know it.
Mhm.
So I think the idea behind CBT is that you stay there and test the hypothesis that you're going to die, or test the hypothesis that things will be all right.
Mm.
Um, but when
It's
you
about
feel, I
it's
know,
about evidence, isn't it? It's about gaining, like gathering evidence. Like
yeah,
what evidence do you have to say that you're going to die in Walmart?
that's right, yeah.
Mm.
And you have no evidence. And did you die before in Walmart? And what went wrong? Usually nothing.
Mm.
I mean, it's a behavioural experiment based on behavioural activation, which is the behavioural part of CBT. So you go there and you stay there despite the feelings. And we're going back to what you were talking about to Drew, the Claire Weeks thing about accept, float, let time pass, and that.
Mhm.
Um, and it's so very difficult. As she says in the Essential Help for Your Nerves, Self Help for Your Nerves, all the books, they say the same thing, which is um, try to float through this situation, try to imagine yourself just wandering through. I
Mhm.
think it'd be easier if you're on a mountain in Tibet
Yeah.
than the Trafford Centre, in the middle of Selfridges.
Possibly.
um, but the system gets overwhelmed, and this is like where vestibular migraine comes in. You can be triggered by fluorescent lights, you can be triggered by the fast movement of people, you
Mhm.
can be triggered by smells and olfactory sensations. So all those things can cause disequilibrium. you've got three main things that create balance. As you know, there's the eyes, the ears, the vestibular system in the ears, the eyes, and then the proprioceptors, which is all the muscles and the bodies, the skeletal balance system. Yeah. So the brain has to process all that and create a balance. So when you're going dizzy and the adrenaline's flooding through your body and the cortisol, the balance just goes out a bit. And I think from what you've described in many videos, and certainly my own experiences, you don't have it 24/7. You just go a bit funny like that. Or a room spin. You know those room spins? Drew was saying it in the last video where he said, oh, it's a bit funny.
Oh, yeah, because he had a bit of vertigo on that episode.
That's right, yeah. Yeah. So the vertigo is part of it. And it's like where the room goes like, ooh, like that, you know, and it's a lot of people describe that. And it's, for me, I tell you what it is for me, and I think it might be the same for you. It drains your confidence completely.
Yeah, definitely. I think
See,
I made a video not that long ago where I talked about just that moment when I was making myself a drink in the kitchen, turned around to put the milk in the fridge, and just for a brief half a second maybe, everything just felt like it was like my brain and body just decided to reboot. So it just shut down for a split second and then powered back up. But everything just went like weird.
Yeah, I think you called it brain zaps, didn't you?
That was it. Yeah. I did a bit of research into it, and that's what I was finding was that people refer to that as a brain zap.
Yeah, it's a real weird one. I mean, it comes on with fatigue. It comes on with again low blood sugar, and it's also that thing. I think I always think of it as like a mini flood of adrenaline, because anything like that can cause that to happen. And it's just such a disconcerting experience where you think,
that's the thing, yeah, because you spend the next like 3-4 days thinking, is that going to happen again? Just waiting. Yeah,
I do. And
And
I'm a
because
therapist doing this, you know, and I'm the same, yeah.
And because it comes out of the blue, for me anyway, like there's no telltale that it's going to happen in the next 10 minutes. It could happen now and I would have no idea.
And no particular trigger?
None whatsoever. Like I've had those situations where I've just been sitting watching TV, where I've been standing talking to my daughter, or putting milk in the fridge. Just like, here we go. I think the key is it's in my reaction. That's the key. It's in my reaction to it, because it's over as quick as I've got a friend in America that I talk to, and he gets those, I call brain zaps. Don't bother him. Don't bother him at all. Care. No. But then like other things, like, I don't know, palpitations or a bit of shallow breathing. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you've just mentioned there another cornerstone of CBT. One of the main tenets is that it's not the event that upsets us, but our reaction to it. So it's not so much the event of the room spin or the brain zap, whatever you want to call it. It's not that, but it's our reaction to it. So you and I spend 3 days researching about what this could mean, when it'll happen again. You know, the enormity. What does it say? What could it possibly be? And it might be nothing. We can assume it's nothing because both you and I, again, we've been having these for years, so it doesn't seem like it's going to kill us.
Hopefully not.
No, and it might be that it's nothing. It might be that other people get them and just ignore them. You know,
I think that, yeah.
I was going to say they talk about selective attention in CBT, where you attend to the things that you think are relevant, or things that have become important to you. You know, like when you're about to buy a Ford Focus and all you can see on the road is Ford Focuses.
Yeah.
It's that, and it's like, so if we were at the Trafford Centre now, probably thinking like, oh God, when will I go dizzy? When will this happen?
Mm-hmm.
Or flying. I mean, that's a massive thing for people. Flying. I know that you're not a great flying fan, are you?
Nope.
I've flown myself. You know, it was my, you know, terrible experiences of flying that seems to exacerbate anxiety, doesn't it?
Mm.
I mean, so many people on your wall have mentioned flying
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you said, I think, again to Drew the other day, it's not, it's, did you say it's not the crashing, it's the being trapped?
Yeah, it's not the thought of flying or anything like that. It's not a fear of heights or anything like that. It's just once them doors are shut and I can't get out, like I might need a bit of fresh air.
Yeah. Well, yeah, once you're in, aren't you?
Mm.
It's a galling situation, really, because, like you
Mm.
say, the doors come down, then you hear that hiss, the pressure of the door lock shutting or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
then you're gonna get
Interesting.
up. Yeah, if
For
you're gonna get up, it's gonna cost you 20 grand, you know,
yeah.
to to divert or whatever they do,
Yeah.
you know.
My
Hearing these
son's
people.
my son's birthday was January, and I bought him an escape room experience, like for 4 people: me, my girlfriend, my son, and my daughter. So like,
Right.
I've got that in my head. Like, we are gonna go and do this escape room experience. So I'm gonna
Right.
be locked in a room. I think it'll be good practice, man. But it's
Mm.
a similar sort of thing. Like, you're in. There's no way out apart from the
Yeah.
escape room. I can hopefully figure
Really?
the way out of there. But I just think
Wow.
that's really cool, man. I want to do some kind of vlog about that escape
Like
room
Crystal
experience.
Maze or something.
You're basically locked in a room and there's different puzzles. You have to find different clues, different answers to puzzles so you can actually get out of there. So should
That's great, that, because a lot of anxious people wouldn't be prepared to do that, would
yeah,
they?
no, I thought about it and I watched a film. There was a film on TV called Escape Room and it was pretty
Mm.
horrific. But I thought that's a good idea. Like,
Yeah, I think
it
I've
was a
heard of
horror.
that.
It was a horror. People were
Yeah.
dying in there and that, and I thought that's a good idea.
Mm.
So yeah, I booked an escape room, which we need to do, and that'll be interesting, man. Just to see how freaked out I am once those doors are locked and we're stuck in there.
You'll have
Like,
to do a video on that.
yeah, definitely. How will I respond?
Yeah. Well, this is it. Respond. That's the big word. How
Mm,
will I respond to this? I mean, I often look at other people doing things and I think, well, they're all right.
mm-hmm,
That they are. It's not everybody suffers, but I think you've got to have what Claire Weeks called a sensitized nervous system or a sensitive nervous system,
mm.
whereby you've always. I remember on a school report that I had from when I was 12, it said Anthony is a born worrier, which
Oh,
is
really?
like
Yeah,
really damning, isn't it? That, you know what I
yeah.
mean? And I didn't even know it at the time,
Mm,
but I thought, yeah, that's. So I must have been, you know, fretting about something or other then, and
yeah.
I think it's part of a personality trait to
Mm-hmm.
um, be that way inclined, to be a bit of a um, yeah, worrier. I don't think there's a
Mm.
better word than
Yeah,
that. And
I
then
never used to be. I never used to give two hoots about a thing. It
when
was
did you
just,
start?
it was when I had my first panic attack, like, I don't know, it's close to 15 years, I'm sure it is. Just had a panic attack out of the blue. I was high at the time, which probably didn't help. But
Yeah,
I just had a bit of grief with an ex-girlfriend. I'd had my car smashed up. And
right.
then I think it was the night after that I was at home on my own. Well, I had my lad with me, but it was only like 4.
Mm,
I was playing on the Xbox and just from what I can remember, like when I think back to it now, it was like I had one of those brain zaps. But
yeah,
obviously I didn't know at the time. And it's only been recently that I've thought to myself that that's possibly what it was. But from that, it just escalated. Just blurred vision. Breathing was all out of whack. Couldn't swallow at the time. Heart starts racing, sweating.
yeah.
I just thought that was it. This is the end. And then from that day, like my life has never been the same. Always been worried about that happening again, even though it has, and I'm still here.
Has it been as bad as that first one?
I've probably had a few that have been as bad. Yeah.
Mm.
Not many though. Probably only like, I would say maybe 5.
Do you think like it was a result of an accumulation of stressors? You know, there's a famous list called the Holmes-Rahe stress list, and on it it's got like a list of 100 things. Like
Mm,
the biggest stress you can have is the death of a spouse,
hmm
or divorce would be 80 out of 100, scoring 80. And there's minor stresses like parking ticket scores 5 or something, speeding's 15, going on holidays 40 because whatever,
Yeah,
um, moving house would be 60. So, and they say these accumulated stresses can lead you to have sensitized nervous
it
system.
could
And
well have been, yeah, because I'd not long, I think maybe a year before, split from my son's mum. So, you know, it's
yeah,
possible. Yeah.
she's a lady on your first videos, is that right?
No, no, that's my daughter's mum.
Oh,
God.
I see. Okay, yeah, I didn't know. It's the one in the caravan, you know, your early caravan
hmm
ones,
That was
in Devon, I think.
just after I'd had vertigo.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, because
rough.
you're walking around. There's one way you're walking around. I think it's outside the house. You've either just got back from Devon or you're just going, and you're in a fairly um what's the word, anxious state.
Mm.
Um, at that time, I think, because I think the nearer you are to the problem, the worse it is, because it can destabilize. Like I was saying earlier, it can drain your confidence, can't it? So
Yeah,
that
yeah, definitely.
you're bobbing along one day, next minute you just want to go to bed and roll over and forget about it all. And I
hmm
think that's when depression can walk in the door as well. You know, depression's always in the wings. I think depression, I always think, is anxiety turned inwards, when you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like
They
you've
go
given
hand
up
in
on it.
hand. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you think like, yeah, how can I get rid of this? Why can't I just go to Spain on a plane? Why can't I just sit through having my hair cut at
Yeah, man.
for half an hour? You know, I think you mentioned that in one of your videos as well, the
Yeah, yeah.
hair cutting thing. And for some people, that people mention that a lot. Say, well, it's like the plane thing. You can't get out. Well, you could get out. You could actually get out of a hairdresser's,
hmm
but you're there in the barbers or whatever, and you're sort of trapped, aren't you? And you're in the glare of spotlight,
hmm
and it's quite an intense experience. That
It
really,
does because I think you're just sitting there and inward thinking. That's what it is.
yeah,
You're just constantly like, "Am I okay?" Questioning.
yeah,
It's horrible.
and that's it. That's it, isn't it? Trapped again, questioning, there with your thoughts, and I don't know what'll happen to me. What's going to happen? What if I have a panic attack while she's halfway through the haircut? We'll have to run out down the street with a
It's
with a
happened to me. I had
really
I was like halfway through a haircut and I had to bail out of the hairdressers, but I did go back and get it finished. But
right.
like it's happened. It's
Mm.
happened. It's real.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So
that was a
so what
long
did you
time ago.
do? You went down the street,
I just went outside, stood outside for a minute. Obviously, as soon as you get to the door, everything's fine because that's the way it works.
mm,
And then a couple of minutes passed, and I just went back in. I have this thing whereas if I go to a hairdresser's or I go anywhere, if I've got a meeting for work or something, because I have a lot of my meetings at home, but like
yeah,
I'll tell people I have anxiety. I
mm.
might I might need to just take a minute now and again. I don't know whether
Do you
it's good
think?
or bad because I'm like telling myself that's who I am, which isn't a good
Yeah,
thing because I shouldn't keep reinforcing that I have anxiety because I don't need to. But
no, you should be reinforcing the fact that you don't have it, that
yeah, yeah,
everything's okay. In terms of the positive positive speak to yourself, or positive thinking, or what Anthony Robbins would call transformational vocabulary.
mm,
You should be telling yourself that everything's cool, and
I'm
I'm
great.
all right.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah,
mm.
everything's going brilliantly.
It's weird
Uh,
though because when I do that, like if I have a meeting and I just tell them, I struggle with anxiety, like that's why the meeting's at my house. Like
mm,
that'll be it. There won't be any more anxiety. I'll be able to sit comfortably, relax. It's stupid. But if I don't say that when they first walk in, then I'll be sitting here thinking, oh, I should have said something, man. Shit. What am I going to do?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like if I could just convince myself in my head that I did say it, then you know what I mean. It's so weird. It's what
Do you think?
it's what you're focusing on.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, selective attention, that isn't it?
Mm.
I mean, do you think a lot of it's about being able to self-soothe or to self-reassure? You know, to say like everything's going to be all right. Um, I've got your back. When you've actually got your own back. You
Yeah.
actually,
I just
you
think
know.
I have so little confidence in myself having my own back that it's like, don't know, man.
I think that's the big thing, that the confidence thing.
Yeah.
You've actually, in a way, you've got to become your own parent, or that's what I say in therapy. People have got to become their own therapist. They've got to have a little therapist on their shoulder saying,
Yeah.
therapist says, everything's okay. You've been here before. You know what the symptoms are like. They're not actually going to get any worse. They only ever work on certain parts of the nervous system. So you never get an unusual symptom. You never get a pain in your foot with it, or you never get a liver problem, or you never get your hair falling out. It's always the same symptoms. And you know that because it's adrenaline based and cortisol, you know that it's going to burn out and that you'll be all right. And it's this little therapist saying,
Just stick
yeah,
with it. Just
stick
stick
with
with
it,
it. Yeah.
stay where you are, because you know you're going to be okay. And I think that reassurance is sometimes hard to get even from yourself, you know, uh, because there's obviously fight or flight's involved heavily with this. So you want to flee because you're sort of trying to fight an invisible enemy, aren't you? If you go dizzy, you can't start, shadow boxing in the middle of the Trafford Centre, boxing your dizziness. But the way to box your dizziness is by just staying there. And again, it's not put any better than Claire Weeks, to accept, to float, to let time pass, which is basically Buddhism, isn't it? It's acceptance. I think Drew called it surrender, didn't he?
Yeah.
And whatever you want to call it, acceptance, surrender. Part that is obviously an Eastern philosophy thing. It's like, I mean, I've personally found that breathing's quite a good thing as well. Whether it's CBT breathing or yoga, pranayama breathing, or Buddhism or meditation or mindfulness, whatever you want to call it. Breathing's quite good. I mean, I don't know if you get involved with anything like. I know you're involved with breathing as you live, but whether you do any breathing techniques, have they provided any relief?
I don't know. I mean, I've got some on the website, but I never practice stuff like that. I don't do meditation. I don't do a lot that is good for you. And then I
Right.
sit here wondering why I don't feel great. It's pretty clever, isn't it?
Yeah. The breathing's quite a good one. There are two main ones that I talk about in CBT, and one's called 7-11 breathing, which you probably know about. In through the nose at 7, out through the mouth at 11. There's more to it than that, but it's on Google. Anyone can look at that. It's called 7-11 breathing. That's quite good for calming the nervous system, because the carbon dioxide and the oxygen go out of kilter when we're nervous and upset. Like the panic attack thing, that
Yeah.
shallow breathing, it puts the carbon dioxide and the oxygen out of kilter. And it's called the Bohr effect, BOHR. And so you can reverse that by doing 7-11 breathing, or the old technique of breathing in and out of a paper bag to rebreathe your own air.
Yeah.
That usually has a calming effect. Or there are many breathing techniques. The Buddhism thing about going to the breath is quite a good one. Counting down breaths from 100 in sevens, which takes quite a lot of doing, like 193, etc., whatever the next one is. Things like that, and going to the breath always returning to the breath can take you out of that sort of anxiety cycle of what ifs. Because it's a lot of it's based on what if, isn't it? What if I faint? Because I suppose that's the worst aspect of dizziness. What if I go so dizzy that I hit the deck and yeah, that's probably the worst thing, I guess. And Claire Weeks talks about turning a what if into a so what, doesn't she? Because she was a sufferer as well.
Yeah, it's Barry McDonough that talks about that, I think.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what? So what if I'm dizzy? So what if I'm if I have this like pull to one side, or this disequilibrium, or it could be anything. It could be that I haven't had enough sleep. It could be that I haven't had enough to eat. It could be that I haven't had any breakfast. It could be the trigger of a fluorescent light. It could be that I've had so many stressors that I just need a rest. Because again, I think if you rest the nervous system, it regenerates, doesn't it? We become, when we've been depleted, we can only resolve that by resting and moping about for a while, and then getting ourselves together.
Interesting. Yeah.
So you say you don't do much to make yourself. Is it the fear of it not working that stops you?
I don't think so. I think I reached a point where it's just like, sod it. It's been that long. Like, I made a lot of progress once, then I had a major setback, and I'm back in the rut. So it's kind of like, that's where I am. But I'm doing these podcasts. And the last podcast that I did with Carl, which you haven't seen yet.
No.
Like that, I'm hoping is going to point me in a different direction, just to try something new. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I like the idea of getting this info out there, and I don't know, sharing these techniques, man. That's what this is about. Breaking shit down.
Yeah, I mean, some clients say that the anxiety just goes away if they're drunk or if they take
That's
diazepam.
brilliant.
Do you know what I mean? They just say, like, all this talk. You talk this, you talk that, you do thought records, you talk about Ellis, Bex, Claire Weeks, Yalom, anyone. And in actual fact, a couple of double vodkas take it away for them. The trouble with that is, of course, it can give birth to an addiction problem, especially with like benzodiazepines. So many people are on diazepam, and it takes away the anxiety. It's anxiety when you have diazepam and it goes. I mean, I don't know if you've tried anything like that.
No, nothing.
I haven't neither, but a lot of clients say, oh yeah, it's the benzos. But again, the trouble is then the doctors don't give much diazepam out. Then they try and get another prescription, they can't, so then they're on the internet trying to get it from America or whatever. And they're going down a route then of, like codeine, you're going down a route of addiction. So one small relief, fantastic, but you might become an addict, whether it's alcohol or benzos, and that can be a great problem. In the addiction clinic where I work, we've got loads of people who've been self-medicating anxiety and depression. They've been self-medicating it with alcohol or benzos or cannabis, and then because tolerance levels go up, it becomes more and more seductive to escape from life to those things, and they find it takes all the symptoms away. But then you've got an addiction problem, and then you've got two problems, really, haven't you? Because you've got anxiety and the other stuff,
So is CBT based on similar things to what Claire Weeks says?
Yeah, I think Claire Weeks was a woman before her time. I think she was obviously a doctor of science and a GP and all this, very highly regarded. I think what she's done there is distilled Eastern philosophy and Buddhism and CBT I mean, she was writing before CBT was what it is today.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there
of
are,
course.
I don't think there's one reference in one of her books to anything. I think
No.
she was a complete,
Pioneer.
yeah, pioneer. Yeah, perfect. I think she was, and her method is basically CBT. The CBT people probably wouldn't, the purists probably wouldn't agree with that. They say, oh, there's much more to it than that. And I think a lot of CBT academics have made it very complex.
That's what.
When
Yeah, I
in
was just gonna
actual,
say. Does it need to
yeah,
be?
it doesn't need to be,
Mm.
especially because, like I said earlier, the cortex is not thinking like that. You're not thinking about complex things when you're panicking.
Yeah.
It's uh, the amygdala and the limbic system part of the brain that's firing away. You know, when you think you're in danger.
Mm.
And I think Claire Weeks addresses everything perfectly. I mean, I can't. You know, I sound like I'm selling her books. You know what I mean? Like
You on a
Drew was.
commission?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but they're just great books. I recommend them to all clients. Obviously, you've read them and that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it can give such hope because I think there's little chapters on everything, isn't there? Like intrusive thoughts. They. I don't know if that bothers you at all. I think your main thing is more physical, isn't it?
Mhm. Mhm.
Like the dizziness. But so many people are plagued by intrusive
Yeah,
thoughts,
I
and
do. I get asked about that quite often. I
yeah,
remember with my Claire Weeks book, I used to just, if I had an issue, I'd flick to the index, just pick out the
yeah,
symptom I'm experiencing, have a little
yeah.
read.
That's right. Yeah, there's one called giddiness. I think
Mm.
that she calls it giddiness in that sort of
Yeah.
1970s language, you know,
Mm.
and seen her on the on YouTube videos, the real Claire Weeks, you know what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean?
It's
She's like
crazy.
some sort of guru or something,
Mm.
like your great aunt or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, so I think she's distilled and conflated the CBT method into her own thing. This accept, float, let time pass. Um, and maybe that is the answer.
Mm.
Maybe, you know, after speaking to you, I've got to go for some stamps and a few things at the shop. Maybe I
Yeah.
should just float round.
Float to the
Um,
shop.
yeah, float to the shop, float back. And it's never really, what I've found in my own life and with a lot of clients, it's never really as bad as they fear it's going to be.
Mhm.
The worst never happens. I usually ask people three self-referring questions like, what's the worst that could happen?
Mhm.
What's the best that could happen? And what's most likely to happen?
Yeah, yeah.
And usually you
That's
get
a
the likely.
CBT thing, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. You usually get the likely thing.
Mm.
It's never going to be, you know, what's the worst that could happen? People say, well, I go to the shops, I scream, I go mad, I get sectioned, and I'm rocking in a Victorian bath chair in a mental asylum for the
Mhm.
next 80 years.
Mm.
That's the worst that could happen, you know, and they do a lobotomy when I'm for my 90th birthday. Um,
That
so,
doesn't happen often, does it? Doesn't
yeah,
happen
the
often.
treat. Um, so that's the worst. What's the best that could happen? I go there, I feel fantastic, and I buy the winning lottery ticket.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the best. And what's most likely? What's most likely is I'll feel a bit funny, might have a couple of episodes,
Mm.
and then I'll come back. You know.
Mhm.
I mean, there are other like little sub cul-de-sacs that you can go down. You know, like the there's a route of psychology called transactional analysis,
Mm.
which would say that there's a child in all of us that hasn't quite grown up and can't. What we're talking about a few, you know, probably 15 minutes ago now, but there's a child in all of us that hasn't quite grown up and hasn't learned to self-soothe, hasn't
Yeah.
learned to reassure itself, and
Mhm.
I quite like that as well. Um, that like I said, that notion of everything's going to be okay,
Mm.
and then believe in it fully, and it's
Have you
going to be
ever
okay. You know,
have you ever done any work with the NHS?
as a therapist,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, as a counsellor and in CBT, but there's such long waiting
I
lists
was going to say, what do you think that they could do to try and improve like the services? Are the services like Is the response to the services good? It's just that there's not enough on offer. There's not enough therapists, or because my experience, like I've gone back like 3 times and never had a great experience. But it seems like there's nothing else. If the CBT don't work for you, like,
Yeah, it's a
ta-da.
good question. That, yeah, it's
Because it doesn't work for everyone. Like, there's people out there that have read Claire Weeks' books and that hasn't worked. But
yeah,
there's
yeah,
people that
yeah.
have done like hypnotherapy or tried CBD oil and it's worked wonders for them. So it's
Mm.
like there isn't a one size fits all. But when you go to the NHS, it's like, this is what we offer. If you don't turn up,
Yeah,
you're
I
cured.
mean,
Or
yeah, I
so
mean,
that the issue with me, sorry to keep butting in,
no, it's all right. Yeah,
but
yeah, no, I've spoke too much. Yeah,
the thing with CBD, when you have your session and then at the end you fill out the questionnaire, like the GAD-7 or whatever it is, and then if you get a higher mark at the end of the session, or that say you've done your 8 weeks and by the end of the 8 weeks you're getting a higher score than you was, they see that as CBT worked, and that's why it gets like, this is the most effective way, because when he came here he was getting a score of 21, and now when he leaves he's getting a score of 7, so CBT worked. But then, like 2 months down the line, I'm back at 21 again, and I've got to go through the whole process again. Like, is
yeah,
that why CBT is labeled as the most effective? Because there's a way that people like score it. It's almost like a review system.
yeah. I mean, you've said quite a lot there. They 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 score it on the GAD-7 and the PHQ-9, and
Mm,
if the scores are too low, they call it below caseness, which is, I think, is a word that the NHS made up, caseness.
right.
And so if you're below typically 5 on the GAD-7 or 7 probably on the PHQ-9, then you would be below probably being seen. And what they usually do, it's like a funnel system, and they call it step care model in the
Mm.
NHS. So you've got people coming in and they get assessed by phone, usually
Yeah, that's
by a
from my
psychological.
experience. It has been
Is that
by
what
phone.
you had?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, by a psychological well-being practitioner, which is a PWP, and then that PWP sends you, like a triage, sends you to either counselling or CBT. The counselling waiting lists on average are about 7 months, and the CBT can be over a year. And that's why people think it's the silver bullet, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, CBT's become popular because it's easier to research, it's easier to garner statistics off. So
Because
it
of
doesn't
those
meander,
questionnaires.
partly because of those questionnaires,
Mm,
but also because it's got a more scientific method involved in the recovery. So it's based on behavioral experiments, and
mm,
you can easier measure that than you can psychodynamic therapy or counseling or I don't know, mentalization or the newer so-called third wave therapies. Um, so CBT is easier to measure, and it's a scientific. It's based on the scientific method, um, and it's got a lot of research evidence
mm,
behind it. So the CBT on the NHS, yeah, you'd get 8 sessions, then you'd do the PHQ-9 and GAD-7 questionnaires. You would, if your scores went down to 5 or below, you would be classed as below caseness and a success story. But
mm.
um, But like I say, because we're emotional animals, it never quite works like that. It comes and goes, comes and goes. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think the best you can do with anxious people is tell them how it works, tell them that their thoughts might be creating their mood, tell them that a forerunner of CBT was REBT by Albert Ellis, which stands for Rational Emotive Behavioural Therapy. And
Right.
he used to tell his patients, as he called them, that they had faulty thinking and
Mm-hmm.
irrational beliefs, which are sort of judgmental connotations to it. But um, he was saying that the way they talk to themselves, the self-talk, is at the root of their dismay. And I'm not sure I buy all that. So I think sometimes it is, like some people are down all the time on
Yeah.
themselves, aren't
Yeah. But it's
they? They'll
like
say,
when like I did some in the last podcast I was talking, I said that my girlfriend's going, because she's from the Czech Republic, I said she's going home for a few days and I can't go with her. And then,
yeah,
like, I thought, I can't, like, I'm saying that I can't do it.
yeah,
Just automatically, it's negative. I can't do this and I won't do that. I can't do this. When the truth is, I can. It's that I stop
yeah.
myself from doing it.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Mm.
And there are some people, there's a certain member in my family, and she always talks down on herself. She says, "Oh no, I can't do that." Oh yeah, if there's a raffle, no, I'll never win it because I never win anything.
Yeah.
Or oh yeah, it will be raining. Or oh yeah, the politicians. Or oh yeah, she thinks she's going to get coronavirus. It's like
Don't we
we're
all?
living in a fearful society, aren't we? So
Uh-huh.
we don't want to add to it ourselves by negative self-talk. Although it can be so easy to do when life, well, when life vomits in your face all the time, it's
Mm.
quite easy to get down on yourself
Yeah.
and try to,
Definitely.
it's difficult sometimes to stay upbeat, isn't it?
Yeah. Definitely. But as you mentioned, coronavirus, like this podcast isn't going to go out till next week, probably. So
Mhm.
we're talking about the future here. What do you
Yeah,
reckon? What's your thoughts? I'm asking everybody your thoughts on the coronavirus, please. COVID-19. What the fuck's going on?
yeah.
It's so there's
Well,
basically there's three schools at my daughter, like where my daughter goes to school. There's another two schools. They all share the same playing field, and one of the schools has been closed because one of the members of staff tested positive. So it's like it's right down the fucking road from me.
yeah. So it's. I mean, it's hard not to be anxious in the light of that. But I mean, from what I can gather, it's just a cold, isn't it? And
It seems
I
to
know
be like
some,
it's another strain of flu, isn't it?
yeah, it's
We
like
had
a
the
flu
swine
or something.
flu, and they tried to freak us out about that. It kind of
Yeah,
worked. We had the bird flu, that was pretty freaky, and now we've got
mm,
this. But I just can't like I can't remember a time in my life where the news has been this focused on the same topic. It's just constant. Like the advice
yeah,
is don't watch the news, but it's just there. It's everywhere. You put Good Morning Britain on. They've
yeah.
got the background with the freaking virus pictures, and it's
That's
all
right.
it's
It's a
all they're
lot of
talking about.
fear. It's a lot of fear, and of course, under any anxiety state is the word fear, isn't it? It's the Dorothy Rowe wrote a great book. She was a contemporary of Claire Wheat's called Beyond Fear.
Hmm.
And when you put the news on, some clients that I've had, I say, what do you watch and that, and they say, well, I have rolling news on. They'll have Sky on in the background, and all you've got there is the subconscious mind being filled with bullshit. You're
I'm
gonna
guilty
die.
of
You're
that.
gonna
I'm guilty
all
of
that.
that.
Yeah, it's not good for you to be. I never want to tell anyone how to live, but it's
Hmm.
really not good for you. You're better off watching comedy and stuff. Have comedy on in the background because it permeates your subconscious mind. The
Yeah.
negative messages. We're living in a very fearful society at the moment. We're being deluged 24/7 with whatever virus, bird flu,
Hmm.
HN1. Now this week it's coronavirus. In a year's time there'll be another one. So it's I don't know what to make of it, but I know we're living in very anxious times,
Hmm.
and that worry when the time comes to worry, because otherwise we spend all our lives worrying about this, that, and the other. We get a mole and we think it's skin cancer, or we hear about coronavirus and then cough a little bit and we think we've got that. We spend all our lives worrying and then get hit by a bus,
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that we never saw coming.
Hmm.
And it's hard to get through, isn't it? I mean, life's hard enough anyway,
It is
without.
tough. It is
Yeah,
tough. So what position are you in now? Like anxiety wise, do you still experience anxiety?
yeah. I think there are degrees of it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
Mm.
I have I have good times and bad, and I think life's like that.
Mm.
Um, I do still get it. It doesn't matter anywhere near as what it used to do
Yeah.
in
It doesn't.
1990.
It doesn't stop you from doing what you need to do.
No, it doesn't. I can go in B&Q now, and I can feel a bit funny, but I'll know it's because of the lights. And I think if you know it's because of the lights, it's all right. In 1992, I would have gone in B&Q, felt a bit funny, come out and thought, oh, Jesus Christ, what's that? Is it this? Is it that? Is it this? And I'd be, well, I wouldn't be on Google at the time. I'd be in Encyclopedia
Yeah.
Britannica or whatever it was, worrying myself to death. Whereas now I know that if I went in this afternoon, it would be because of the lights, because of the fluorescent
Is
flicker.
B&Q still a thing then?
I don't no idea.
No, I'm
I
sure
haven't
it
been in
closed down.
since 1992.
Right.
Is it a thing? I don't know.
I don't know that. I know the one near us shut, so maybe I don't know. If you work at
Uh,
B&Q, I apologise.
yeah, big box stores. It could be anywhere at WH Smith.
Yeah.
I used to get it in there, like, or public libraries, and it's just fluorescent flicker.
Yeah.
And so that set off a lifetime of anxiety, in my case, because of vestibular migraines,
Yeah.
when it was just misdiagnosed or missed.
Mm.
And that's a bit of a tragedy, really, because I went into being a therapist because I'd been set off on a quest for knowledge about anxiety, because I thought it was just that I had.
Mm-hmm.
So I changed my life around in my late 20s, early 30s, and become what I am now just because of that. It's like a weird
But
route,
have you helped people?
Oh yeah, I'd like to think so.
Then it was worth it.
Yeah, it could be. I get a few letters and cards up there, and nice things people say. So yeah, I think from that point of view, it probably was worth it. I mean,
Yeah.
the bottom line is, if this could be believed by you and me or anyone watching this, there's nothing really to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
What's that Roosevelt? I think it was Frank FDR that said it. There's nothing to fear but fear itself.
Something like that.
So yeah, I think he said that. He probably did. It was either him or Buddha. So I think it's that the actual going willingly into the storm without being too shattered by it,
Mm-hmm.
and then coming back and recovering. I mean, and then we're sort of free, I think. In a way, we have to ignore ourselves, don't we?
Yeah.
And be the pat on our own shoulder, be the little mini therapist
Yeah.
again, and say, "Hey, Billy, actually, you're all right. Things will be all right.
You
I
got
think you're
this.
great. I think you're doing well. You've got this. Yeah."
I'd say that's pretty much it, man.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So have you got anything like do you want people to reach out to you or just bugger off?
I don't know. You mentioned the NHS earlier, didn't you? And I know they're a great waiting list. I mean, there are. What I've found in Britain is that people, including myself, they want healthcare free.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got used to having free therapy, free everything, free healthcare, including mental health. And so people can either go onto an NHS waiting list, or a lot of people get healthcare through work, don't they? So-called employee assistant providers. So they can get it from there, or they can just pay to see an individual therapist. They can reach out to me. I do a lot of Skype and Zoom when it works. I do a lot of Zoom calls and Skype stuff like that, so they can see my website and come to me that way. Then they can get an appointment within a week or 10 days. Which is, I mean, I think if you're in the thick of anxiety, it's you need something quite quick, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. It has to be. I think that's another problem with the NHS thing is you have that telephone appointment, and usually, like, you're reaching out to them when you're at your peak. But by the time, give it another 2 months, 3 months, however long you've waited, and it comes around to your first appointment, like, you can be in a completely different mind space by then. That's what I've found in the past. It's like, by the time my appointment comes through, I don't really feel like I need to be wasting their time at that point. Maybe I should, but I don't know. Like, it feels like it needs to be, if you reach out, there's help. That's the way it should be.
There is. I mean, most private therapists cost between 30 and 50 quid, don't they? It's about, so you can say on average about £40 per session. So I mean, you know, obviously some people can't afford that, and that, so it depends. It depends where you are financially, where anyone is. But I think that's probably the only way to do it. I mean, I think the NHS are great in the sense
I
that
do. I think they're unsung heroes, man. 100%.
And the therapists, they're all high quality. They're accredited like myself, and great. You know, I think that's the thing to look for, accreditation status. I think that's one of the gold standards, you know. But I mean, apart from that, I mean, it's a bit of a luck of the draw, really, who you would get as a therapist. I always advise people to sort of audition therapists, you know, to go and see
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah.
See who it fits with, because some therapists, you know, they'll sit there in silence, and not in CBT probably, but it's sometimes hard to get going, or if you don't click, if you don't gel with someone, it'll never work, whatever therapy you use, because there's an argument that says a lot of therapy, the efficacy of therapy is to do with the therapeutic relationship, and nothing else. It's to do with how you get on with someone and whether you believe in that person's method of recovery.
Right.
So I seem to do quite well with that. I seem to be, you know, I don't want to like blowing my own trumpet or anything, but I think it's because I've suffered myself, you know.
I think people like that. People do like that. Being able to relate so you can empathize.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we've covered quite a lot there today.
I think that's it for episode 3.
Episode 3, is it? Yeah.
Of the breakdown. I've got to ask you, what do you think of the name? I'm asking everybody. Do you like the name, The Breakdown?
Yeah, you mentioned mental breakdown, didn't you, before?
Yeah.
And
there's 3 aspects to it. We've got, like, the mental breakdown. We've got breaking down CBT, which is what we've kind of done today. And we've also got breaking down the barriers of being afraid of talking about this crap. So,
yeah, I like the name. I think it's hooky. I like Anxiety United as well. I think that's very good. Breakdown's good because it's got the double meaning, hasn't it?
Yeah, that was the point.
And breaking it down, like, you know, breaking it down, taking the pieces out and that.
Yeah.
I think it's really good, actually, yeah.
Cool, man. And that's it. I think we're pretty much, we can wrap it up on that.